Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Ixalan Preview Season, Week 1, Part 2. Alright guys, in this video we'll be going over the red, the green, the artifacts, and the multicolored creatures. Then after that I'll be doing daily videos on those previews as they come out. So we'll be all caught up so I can have my opinion on every single card thus far. But without further ado, let's get into the red creatures. And first up we have Sun-Crowned Hunters. 4 colorless and 2 red mana for a 5/4 dinosaur with Enrage. Whenever Sun-Crowned Hunters is dealt damage, it deals 3 damage to target opponent. Now a 6 mana 5/4 in draft and in sealed is fantastic, but in standard the Enrage feature is kind of good, but also kind of terrible. The reason I think it's good is that if it was on a 3 mana or 2 mana creature, it would be really good. But because it's on a 6 mana creature, it's quite bad actually. And I would only see this being played in draft or sealed. I do like the Enrage mechanic alone though. I think that's really, really cool. And of course, I love the new dinosaur art on these cards. It's just beautiful, guys. The feather work is awesome. Moving up to another draft and sealed card, we have Unfriendly Fire for 4 colorless and 1 red mana. It's an instant. Unfriendly Fire deals 4 damage to target creature or player. This is going to be a snap removal card in draft for you guys. This is obviously not going to see any standard, modern, or EDH play, but the art is nice. You're going to see it in draft and sealed. Just expect that. Again, this is going to be one of those cards you're going to pick at the top of your curve for that nice blowout removal. Basically, Electrify that was in, I think, Amonkhet or Hour Devastation. This is replacing that, basically, in the draft format. Moving up to our first rare of red, we have Angrath's Marauders. 5 colorless, 2 red mana for a 4/4 human pirate. If a source you control would deal damage to a permanent or player, it deals double that damage to that permanent or player instead. This card is quite good in draft sealed and maybe even standard, although 7 mana is, again, a ton of mana to spend on a creature. The reason I don't see this being played in standard as often as it should be probably is that it doesn't have any kind of evasion or protection from any kind of removal spell. So you just dump 7 mana into a creature and they just use a removal spell that's 3 mana or 4 mana and it's gone. The immediacy of its effect in standard or modern or things like that is not good enough to really facilitate it being in those formats. I think in draft and sealed this is going to be a win more card, and I think in EDH if you're wanting a pirate deck, this is going to be one of those cards that you want to put in your pirate deck. But moving on to another rare, we've got Burning Sun's Avatar. 3 colorless and 3 red mana for a 6/6 dinosaur avatar. When Burning Sun's Avatar enters the battlefield, it deals 3 damage to target opponent and 3 damage to up to 1 target creature. Okay, a 6 mana 6/6 in draft and sealed is great. That's exactly what you want on curve. But the added ability is also very good in that format. In standard though, this is not what I want to be doing in standard for 6 mana. A 6 mana 6/6 is fine, but the effect it does is a little limiting and not nearly as good as it needs to be for the mana you're spending. So it's a bit inefficient, so I could only kind of see this as a bulk rare that's going to be played and drafted and sealed. Maybe in, of course, the EDH deck. I think that's definitely where it needs to be. But yeah, I don't see it being played in standard at all. You guys can prove me wrong, though. I think that there was an argument being made that this might be good in standard. But again, to me, I just don't see it. I don't see it. This looks like an EDH all-star card. Moving on to another rare, we've got Tilani's Skin Shifter. 2 colorless and 1 red mana for an 0/1 human shaman with haste. Whenever Tilani's Skin Shifter attacks, it becomes a copy of another target non-legendary attacking creature until end of turn. This is actually quite good. However, if you do pull this in sealed and in draft, I don't think the utility is there for this card to be great. But in standard, think of like copying a Glorybringer or some other huge creature that you have swinging in. I think this is definitely what that wants to be doing. And for 3 mana, the ability to copy another creature that's on your side of the field is quite good. However, just by itself though, a 0/1 for 3 that has haste is not great. So this really has to be paired into a creature heavy deck that's going to be getting in turn over turn. I like it and I think it has some potential, but yeah, I don't see anything besides that. Probably won't be played modern usually, and I think maybe in a EDH deck would be really cool too. But I might feel bad for you if you pull this in draft or sealed. I'm not entirely sold on it being terrible in draft and sealed, but of course it needs another creature to be good in draft and sealed, so we'll kind of see what that does there. But I'm a little leery on it. I think it's probably going to have a better spot in standard. Moving on up to another rare, we've got Sunbird's Invocation, 5 colorless and 1 red mana for an enchantment. Whenever you cast a spell from your hand, reveal the top X cards of your library, where X is that spell's converted mana cost. You may cast a card revealed this way with converted mana cost X or less without paying its mana cost. Put the rest on the bottom of your library in any random order. I feel like this card just screams brew around me for standard right now. This might be pretty decent in a standard deck. I'm not entirely sure where it would be fitting though. Maybe in a mono mono red burn deck, there's actually quite a few cards coming out now that make burn in standard actually an option. In draft and sealed though, this would be just a bulk rare you want to pass over. However, there are a ton of large dinosaurs out on the field, so if you get this out for 6 mana, cast a huge dinosaur, you can dig possibly 6 cards deep and cast another dinosaur. So I think that is really cool. So that's why I think there might be some kind of weird standard deck that this is going to be in. But besides that, I'm kind of leery about anything else. I don't think this is going to be in modern. I think it's definitely an EDH card for sure. But in draft and sealed, this probably won't be a good fit. Moving on, we've got Captain Lannery Storm, 2 colorless, 1 red mana for a 2/2 legendary creature human pirate with haste. Whenever Captain Lannery Storm attacks, create a colorless treasure artifact token with tap this artifact, sack 1 mana of any color to your mana pool. Whenever you sacrifice a treasure, Captain Lannery Storm gets +1/+0 until end of turn. Tireless Tracker, this is not, sadly. I do think this has an interesting ability on it, however. It does let you kind of create tokens to be able to sack for more powerful creatures and spells, and it does have the side ability to be able to pump itself while you sack those treasures. I do think a red-black pirate Revel in Riches deck might be part of this as well, which is really, really cool. But besides that, I mean, it's just a 2/2 with haste that has a secondary ability. In draft and sealed, this can help you kind of ramp up to your big bomb, and in standard, it can do the exact same thing. Though I kind of think it's probably just going to be in a Revel in Riches deck in standard. In EDH, this is a cool pirate. And I don't see this being a legendary creature like Commander in EDH either. And again, in Modern, I just don't see this being played. So, moving on to another card, we've got Rowdy Crew. It's 2 colorless, 2 red mana for a 3/3 human pirate with Trample. When Rowdy Crew enters the battlefield, draw 3 cards, then discard 2 cards at random. If 2 cards that share a card type are discarded this way, put 2 +1/+1 counters on Rowdy Crew. A 4 mana 3/3 with Trample is pretty decent in draft and sealed, and the secondary ability to kind of draw 3 cards, then discard 2 cards at random with the off chance of making it a 5/5, that's actually kind of awesome in draft and sealed, and definitely on flavor for pirates for sure. I'm really interested to see what kind of comes of this in the future. I think this probably will not be played in standard though. A lot of cards that have like a random clause in them usually don't get played in standard at all because they're just, again, they're random, so they can't really predict them. But in draft and sealed, go nuts. This card is crazy cool for a mythic. Moving on to another flavor one, we have Star of Extinction, 5 colorless, 2 red mana for sorcery. Destroy target land. Star of Extinction deals 20 damage to each creature and each planeswalker. Well, this card is insane. It's a 7 mana board wipe that also takes out a land with it. The only thing that I wish it also did was actually make indestructible creatures lose indestructible, like our Devastation does. But again, this is just silly. Play it in draft and sealed if you want a flavor win. Probably won't be playing this in standard at all. Probably won't be playing this in modern at all. But in EDH, this card is amazingly good for you guys. Go nuts, have fun, and again, like, make sure that you have some indestructible creatures on the field, because 20 damage is ridiculous. But that's going to do it for the red creatures. Let's go on to the green creatures. We have Tishana's Wayfinder for 2 colorless and 1 green mana for a 2/2 Merfolk Scout. When Tishana's Wayfinder enters the battlefield, it explores. Again, if you guys didn't catch up on the first video, explores is reveal the top card of your library, put that card into your hand if it's a land, otherwise put a +1/+1 counter on this creature, then put that card back on the top or into your graveyard. I think Explorers has a super fun like mechanic. I think it does a lot of things really well, and I think a 3 mana 2/2 that has Explore on it is just fine for draft, sealed, and probably standard. But in standard, I think it's a bit on the expensive side. The only place it could probably be seen in is a either exploring deck or a Merfolk deck. This is not a playable modern card, and EDH just might be okay for a Merfolk deck, but there are just so many other great Merfolks to play with. But it's on curve in draft and sealed. It helps you kind of dig a little bit deeper and get a land, or make this guy a 3/3, as well as fill your graveyard with cards if you need that as well. So pretty good all-arounder for draft and sealed, but not really hot on any other format for this card. Moving on to another card, we have this card that needs to be translated. It is Kumina's Omen Speaker, 1 green for a Merfolk. It's a 1/1, and it gets +1/+1 as long as you control another Merfolk or an island. This is basically a Simic card in just green, which is really cool. So a 1 mana 2/2, if you're playing in Simic in draft and sealed, is actually quite good and very aggressive. There's a lot of talk of this card kind of replacing Curse Catcher in the Merfolk deck in modern, and it might get there. There's going to be some testing probably need to be done about that, but in draft, sealed, and probably standard, this card is great on your curve and can be a 1 mana 2/2, and that is always good. And of course in EDH, this is a great on on curve merfolk as well. Moving up to another green card, we have Verdant Sun's Avatar, 5 colorless, 2 green mana for a 5/5 dinosaur avatar. Again, the art in this set is just fantastic. I mean, look at that stuff. It's amazing. But it says whenever Verdant Sun's Avatar or another creature enters the battlefield under your control, you gain life equal to that creature's toughness. In Draft and Sealed, this is a win more card for sure, but a 7 mana 5/5 is nothing to sneeze at. The life gain, though, however, is very valid if you have the ability to kind of play creatures turn over turn in Draft and Sealed. In Standard, though, 7 mana for a 5/5 again is a lot to ask for in Standard, but the life gain is pretty relevant. Especially in a creature-heavy strategy where you're basically ramping to get your big bombs. So you'll be taking a couple hits in between all of that to make sure you have your bombs. So this might be something to play in that deck, but I wouldn't really count on it. In Modern, this is not playable, but in EDH, this card is crazy awesome, so I would go nuts there. Next up, we've got Waker of the Wilds, 2 colorless and 2 green mana for a 3/3 Merfolk Shaman. It's got X and 2 green, put X +1/+1 counters on target land you control. That land becomes a 0/0 elemental creature with haste. It's still a land. This card is really, really good in Draft and in Sealed. By itself, you play it on the field, it's going to be on curve as a 4 mana 3/3, but it can also create creatures out of your lands if you don't have creatures in your hand, or you're not drawing into creatures and you're just drawing land. So if you flat out in Draft and Sealed, this card is amazing. I'm kind of confused at why this Merfolk wasn't actually in Battle for Zendikar or Oath of the Gatewatch. It seems like something that would really benefit from that set. It's really sad that those are actually rotating out when Ixalan releases. But I do like this card quite a bit. I'm not really sure about Standard applicability. I think it's good, but I don't think it has the ability to kind of reach into that kind of set. But maybe there's a brew around set in Frontier that this card might be useful in. I know Modern, this probably won't be used at all just because of the mana expense, but in EDH, this card is stupid fun. Moving up to another card, we have Shaper's Sanctuary, 1 green for an enchantment. Whenever a creature you control becomes target of a spell or ability an opponent's controls, you may draw a card. Now, we all know how relevant card draw is in Magic the Gathering, and in Draft and Sealed, this card is really, really good, especially if they're not creatures, they're removal spells in Draft and Sealed. So this card is awesome for that. So I think this card is going to be highly picked in Draft and Sealed. In Standard, this card might be a sideboard option against a heavy removal deck, like a Rakdos strategy or perhaps a Martyr Vehicle strategy, where if they're not vehicles or creatures, they're removal spells. And it is only just 1 mana to draw a card, so I think it's something you can actually slide into a deck without really hurting yourself too much, since it has passive abilities. I think the card's fun. You should probably test around with it a bunch. It might be into a Simic Merfolk deck. That would be a lot of fun. But all of these Simic cards that are for the Merfolk basically are discouraging removal spells to be thrown at your creatures, which is awesome. That's exactly what you want to be happening, so you can make sure your Merfolk can get into turn over turn. Oh, and of course for Modern, this might see some kind of play. This is basically one aspect of Leovold, which is actually really fun. I think this might have some applicability in Modern, probably in EDH and Vintage or Legacy, stuff like that though instead. But let me know in the comments below for sure. I think this card has some real viability in a bunch of different formats. But I think in Standard, you might just see this be a sideboard card only. Moving on to another creature, we have Ripjaw Raptor, 2 colorless, 2 green mana for a 4/5 dinosaur with Enrage. Whenever Ripjaw Raptor is dealt damage, draw a card. A 4 mana 4/5 in green is awesome for our Draft and Sealed picks. Its Enrage ability is actually quite good if you're wanting to trade up or just basically get in for some damage, because it gives you gas in your hand. So I think this might actually see play in a Standard deck maybe, because it's doing tempo on both sides. Basically playing a 4/5, which is tempo gaining, and when it attacks in or is killed, it's going to be tempo gaining for your hand as well. So that's really interesting for me. I think the card has a lot of viability in those two formats, but in Modern, I don't think this card has much legs. In EDH though, this card is quite good, so look out for that as well. Next up, we have Old Growth Dryads, 1 green mana for a 3/3 Dryad. When Old Growth Dryads enters the battlefield, each opponent may search his or her library for a basic land card, put it onto the battlefield tapped, then shuffle his or her library. I know this card is super divisive for a lot of people, but for me, I think it's great in Draft and Sealed. I think it might be amazing in Modern or Standard, depending on what kind of setup or matchup you're playing against. I know in Modern, it's going to be a lot better because of the basic land situation based on a lot of the shock lands and other types of dual lands that people run in Modern, but a 1 mana 3/3 is nothing to sneeze at. I think a lot of people who are upset by this card aren't really thinking about other formats besides perhaps Standard. I think this card is going to be amazing in Modern. I think it's probably going to be really good in other more Eternal formats. In EDH, this card is a ton of fun as well, where mana ramp doesn't really matter as much since it's more of a casual format. And in draft and in sealed, I think this card might be really, really good there as well. It just kind of depends on how you want to play out the match. But I do think a 1-mana 3/3 is amazing. So it's really one of those cards where it's like either you love it or hate it. I think it's really, really good, and I think it has potential to be amazing, but we just got to wait and see for how it plays out in the meta. Moving on to another card, we have Emperor's Vanguard. 3 colorless, 1 green mana for a 4/3 human scout. Whenever Emperor's Vanguard deals combat damage to a player, it explores. I really like the capability of this card, being able to get in turn over turn and exploring. I think that's awesome. I think a 4/3 for 4 in draft and sealed is just fine. And the mana ramp it does give you with the exploring, as well as maybe putting counters on itself, is very good as well. In standard, this might actually be in a pretty cool human deck, or in just a really interesting like explore deck or ramp deck. In modern, this probably won't be played at all. And EDH, this card is awesome as well. But also, like, look at that art. I love this art. This is crazy cool. But moving on from this card, we have Deeproot Champion, 1 colorless, 1 green for a 1/1 Merfolk Shaman. Whenever you cast a non-creature spell, put a +1/+1 counter on Deeproot Champion. This card is amazingly fun. This is basically saying, hey, build a Simic, like, pump spell deck in draft, sealed, or standard. This card has the potential to ramp up quite heavily in draft and sealed, as well as in standard. But the problem is that merfolks really just kind of depend on each other, as in other creatures, and so the non-creature spell clause on the card itself is something that I wouldn't necessarily like put money into too heavily. I think it's a lot of fun. I think there's probably going to be someone who brews around this card. I might brew around this card because it seems like a lot of fun. But besides that, I don't really see it kind of seeing a lot of like competitive level play. Of course, I could be wrong. But I think this is probably just a mid to low level aggro card for like a Simic aggro, or maybe just a green big down aggro deck if they have pump spells or something like that. I think it might be very, very good in draft and sealed depending on what kind of cards you pull into, but in modern, I don't think this has any legs. In standard, it's probably a little bit too slow as far as the viability and the flexibility of the card, but in EDH, this card is amazing. It's a lot of fun. Moving on to another card, we've got Carnage Tyrant, 4 colorless and 2 green mana for a 7/6 dinosaur. Carnage Tyrant can't be countered. It has trample and hexproof. This card is so good against control. It's like the answer we needed for control. We already have Prowling Sepauper to make sure that it can be countered, as well as making other creatures we control can be countered. But this card is just like, hey, I can't be countered, but also I'm hexproof, and also like if you have like a Torrential Gearhulk in my way, get it out of the way because I'm gonna run over its face. Carnage Tyrant is amazing, guys. Like I can't stress to you enough how good this card is. This card is going to be played in draft. It's going to be played in sealed for sure because it's a 7/6 6/6 that can't be removed except by like board swipe spells. And in standard, this is like the 2 of sideboard card that you're going to want to play against like any control deck ever for the rest of time. However, though, in modern, I think it's a little too expensive, sadly. But in EDH, this card is so good. Like, it's just insane. If you see this card, you put it into your sideboard, and you say, hey, are you playing control? And you just go, and they say yes, you just go, okay, well, I'm just going to scoop and go to game 2 and sideboard 3 of these bad boys into my deck. Because there's nothing they can do. They can't spot removal it. The only thing they can do is settle the wreckage, fumigate, or Hour of Devastation, but they can't kill it with Hour of Devastation. They can only kill it with, like, a straight-up board wipe or a settle the wreckage. Perhaps a Doomfall. There are other cards, obviously. But if this hits on the field and they do not have an answer, I mean, it's a 3-turn clock. Again, I feel like I'm overhyping this card because of how exciting it is to see something that's just so anti-control. But it is genuinely a lot of fun to play, and it is genuinely going to run over control players' face. But that's going to do it for the green cards. Let's move on to our artifacts. And first up, we've got a card that needs translation. It is a Twilight Legion battleship. It's 5 colorless for a 4/6 vehicle. So vehicles are back with crew 2. This art is really, really cool, but the card overall is sort of underwhelming. The card also has vigilance. I'm sorry about that. I feel like I didn't mention that, but it does have vigilance as well. It's still underwhelming with vigilance. However, being able to crew 2 for 5 mana is pretty much on curve from what you want to be doing in draft and sealed, so it'll probably see play there. I'm not so sure about standard because for 5 mana, this card really doesn't do a lot. The low crew ability of it, though, is quite good, so we may see something in it, but I don't really think so. This isn't playable in modern at all, but if you want to play this in your EDH deck, then just go nuts. This card is so much fun. Moving on to another vehicle, we've got Sleek Schooner. It's 3 colorless for a 4/3 vehicle with crew 1. Now this card is really good. I almost think it's too good. It's going to be kind of a sleeper hit because it's just a 3 mana for the it needs a crew 1. This is going to run over a lot of people in Drafted and Sealed. So they're going to play this on turn 3, and then they can either block with it if they need to, or just kind of get in for 4/3 damage on turn 4. I think that's amazing. It's going to come out of nowhere for a lot of people in Drafted and Sealed. I'm not so sure about standard playability for now. I think it's really good. Again, crew 1 is like literally nothing. They can just use a 1/1 token if they need to. But being able to get in for 4 damage on turn 4 is pretty relevant. So that's a 5-turn clock right there. And in draft, that's really good. So I think it's going to be like an all-star card in draft. If you're in a heavy creature deck in draft, I think it probably will see play in standard in some sort of brew. This won't see any kind of play in modern. And in EDH, this will probably be in a pirate deck or a vehicle deck. So I think it's very good. I think the potential of this card is high. But we just got to see what it's going to be in a deck. There are a lot of big creatures in this set, so we just got to see what it does. Moving on to another card, we have Sentinel Totem, 1 colorless for an artifact. When Sentinel Totem enters the battlefield, scry 1. You can tap it, exile Sentinel Totem, exile all cards from all graveyards. Okay, nice. This is going to be one of those few cards in Draft and Sealed you kind of want to just pass up. There's not a lot of graveyard interaction in the Draft and Sealed environment in Ixalan, but in Standard, this is probably replacing Crick of Condemnation in a lot of terms and a lot of places. Basically, this is shutting down like a Godfarrell's Gift deck, any kind of Embalm, any kind of Eternalized deck. It's super good in that regard. It exiles all cards from all graveyards. I mean, it's good. It's a lot of fun. It's not Tormod's Crypt in that it just does this target player, but I still think in the standard format right now, it's quite good. So it's definitely going to be a 2 or 3 of in the sideboard, or maybe a 1 of in the sideboard. But in Modern, it's not going to be played at all because of better cards. And in EDH, it might be played as a sideboard card or just in the main board. But yeah, I love Graveyard Hate, and this is Graveyard Hate right on a silver platter. Just wish we had like a little bit earlier. That would have been nice. But it's fine having it now. Next up, we've got another card that needs to be translated. This is Pillar of Genesis, 2 colorless for an artifact. As Pillar of Genesis enters the battlefield, choose a creature type. You can tap it, add 1 mana of any color to your mana pool, spend this mana only to cast a creature spell of the chosen type. This card is quite good for just 2 mana. This is definitely a tribal piece to help ramp into your other tribal cards in the standard format or even modern format. For 2 mana, this is quite good again. In Draft and in Sealed though, unless you're kind of getting into a heavy tribal theme, this is probably going to be a card you probably don't even want to worry about, just because it has to be so specific in casting that particular type of creature spell. I do think in EDH, however, if you're a tribal themed EDH player, this card is super good and it will definitely see play in EDH or Commander. But moving on to another card, we have Sorceress Spyglass, 2 colorless for an artifact. As Sorceress Spyglass enters the battlefield, look at an opponent's hand, then choose any card name. Activate abilities of Sorceress with the chosen name can be activated unless they're mana abilities. So this is basically like a Pithing Needle with a like peeking ability, which is awesome. If you're playing against an opponent in Draft, Sealed, or Standard, or even Modern, and you don't know what kind of deck they're running, well, you can look at their hand and say, oh, you're running this kind of deck, and so then I can name the card that I want to shut down. I think that's super relevant in like a tournament scenario or situation, so this might be a really decent sideboard option for you guys. But in Draft and Sealed, this is strictly a lockdown card, and I don't think it's going to be played as highly as people think it will be. In Standard, though, this is going to be a sideboard card forever against enter the battlefield abilities, stuff like that, that you really need to kind of get out of the way early in the game, so the mid to late game can go easier for you. And for EDH, this is a great Pithing Needle. There's a lot of actual debate kind of going around where if Sorceress Spyglass had been printed while Marvel was out, Marvel probably wouldn't have gotten banned. So this is one of those cards that's like, it's a little late into the standard format, but it's welcome to be here regardless. Moving on to another artifact, we have Vanquishers Banner for 5 colorless, and as Vanquishers Banner enters the battlefield, choose a creature type. Creatures you control of the chosen type get +1/+1, and whenever you cast a creature spell of the chosen type, draw a card. This card is so much fun with tribal, like seriously, I love it. Basically, if you're playing like a pirate themed deck or a dinosaur themed deck or any other tribal deck, you're basically drawing a card by playing your deck, and you're getting your deck an entire, or your creatures an entire +1/+1 buff. So that's awesome. I think 5 mana is pretty fair for this kind of ability. And I think it's probably going to see play in Standard and EDH, obviously. But in Draft and in Sealed, unless, again, you're kind of getting into a lot of tribal creatures, this card is going to be a card you might just want to pass up. It's definitely a win more card in the draft and sealed meta, but if you do not have a tribal theme in that format, then it's probably just gonna be really bad for you. In modern, it's 5 mana and it's basically useless. That's not to say it's not good, it's just it's not fast enough for the modern format. Moving on, we have Treasure Map. It is 2 colorless for an artifact. Pay 1 colorless and tap it, scry 1, put a landmark counter on Treasure Map. Then if there are 3 or more landmark counters on it, remove those counters, transform Treasure Map, and create 3 colorless treasure artifact tokens with tap, sacrifice this artifact, add 1 mana of any color to your mana pool. So when it flips, it turns into Treasure Cove, which is awesome art, by the way. It kind of looks like a Dominion card, though, honestly. And it's a land, and you can tap it to add 1 colorless mana to your mana pool, or sacrifice a treasure and draw a card. Let me go back to the front here. I think this card is actually quite good, and I love the treasures that it's going to be creating. I think, again, a Revel in Riches deck is basically on the horizon for Standard right now. I'm sure someone's trying to brew that together as soon as possible, and I'm sure we'll have one brewed together on day 1. But what do you guys think of the back here? I think Mark Rosewater said on his Tumblr that this was actually the basically the masterpiece format for the set, and they kind of just threw it out the window because the Invocations kind of did poorly. So I like this a lot better than the Amonkhet Invocations, but I'm not like in love with like changing up the borders and all that kind of stuff on the design. So I like it a lot better than the Invocations, but at the same time, it doesn't look like a Magic card. And at the end of the day, that was the problem I had with the Invocations. But I think this being just on the back of a flip card is fine. I do think, thanks to this card making a lot of treasures, that Marionette Master in I think it's either Kaladesh or Aether Revolt is going to be one of those cards that you kind of want to start picking up before the set starts to take off, because that card is going to be a sleeper hit in this set. There seems to be even more artifacts being created in the set, and that is awesome, especially for Improvise and especially for Marionette Master. So look out for that especially. But that is it for artifacts today. Let's go on to the multicolor creatures, and we've got one up here that is one that needs to be translated, so let me open that up real quick. 5 colorless, 1 green, 1 white for a 4/6 dinosaur. It is Militant Dinosaur, which is a weird name for the name of this dinosaur. Like, what? Militant. Each creature you control assigns combat damage, each to its toughness rather than its power. Interesting. This is basically Doran the Siege Tower's ability, which was actually a rare back in the day, so they basically devalued it to an uncommon, and I feel like it's gonna confuse a lot of like newer players. I like the ability, and I think for 7 mana at 4/6 is quite good in Draft and Sealed. I don't think you'll be playing this at all in Standard. It's just one of those cards that's just kind of difficult to play with, and I don't think this will be played in Modern at all, but in a EDH deck, this card is fun. It's stupid, and it's like confusing, so it just screams EDH for me. But again, I don't think Militant Dinosaur is the actual name. I think it's just because it's being translated here, so we'll have to see what the actual name is. Moving on to another multicolor creature, we have Marauding Looter, 2 colorless, 1 blue, 1 red for a 4/3 human pirate with raid. At the beginning of your end step, if you attack with a creature this turn, you may draw a card. If you do, discard a card. So a 4 mana 4/3 looter that has raid. That's not bad. I think in Draft and in Sealed, if you're in the Izzet colors, this is actually a lot of fun, and it's pretty powerful for 4 power. I think that's awesome. I do think, however, that the raid ability to have it loot every single turn if you attack is pretty sad, though. I think raid, again, is one of those things that's like, if you're ahead in the match, it's going to be great. If you're behind in the match, it's going to suck because this is a 4/3 for 4. That's all it does, you know? So it's one of those things where if you're ahead, it's great. If you're not, it's bad. So I think that this is one of those cards that's going to be great in Draft and Sealed, probably not going to be played anywhere else. Moving on to another card, we have another one that needs to be translated. This is called Invite the Party. It's 2 colorless, 1 white, 1 black for a sorcery. Create 3 1/1 white vampire creature tokens with lifelink. This card is actually not terrible in Draft or Sealed. I think in the Standard format, this might be played if we're just needing some more vampires to kind of go wide, but I think it's just a little bit too expensive for my liking. I do think, though, that Limited is where this card is going to like be an all-star in. Making 3 creatures for 4 mana with lifelink on top of them is quite good. I think this will probably be brewed around in Standard and EDH as well. This will be a ton of fun. But in Modern, it's, again, so close but no cigar. So better luck next time, I suppose. We've got another card that needs to be translated. This is Infuriated Gladiodon? I'm not really 100% sure on the name of this card. It's a 3 colorless, 1 red, 1 green for a 5/5 dinosaur with trample, and when it enters the battlefield, it deals 1 damage to each other creature. So this is actually a really cool 5 mana 5/5 that's an uncommon that can actually turn on your Enrage if you're in Limited, Draft, or Standard. So I think that's a ton of fun. Again, though, guys, the art of these cards is just awesome. Like, I love the art of this guy. It's crazy cool. So yeah, I do think it's going to be great in Draft and Sealed. It might be played in Standard. It really depends on where the meta goes for the ramp in Standard. This is not a card to be played in Modern at all, but in EDH, go nuts, guys. This is a ton of fun. Moving on to another card, we have Direfleet Captain. It's 1 black, 1 red for a 2/2 Orc Pirate. Orc! They're back! Whenever Direfleet Captain attacks, it gets +1/+1 until end of turn for each other attacking pirate. This card is so good! In Drafted and Sealed, if it even triggers one time, a 2-mana 2/2 that turns into a 3/3 is amazing. And it also can do that turn over turn. That's amazing. That's literally like rare level quality there. So if you're seeing this in a draft, you might see it multiple times. And if you do, I would definitely recommend grabbing it because getting into a pirate tribal theme in draft with this card would be amazing. And in Standard, if you're in a red-black pirate deck or pirate theme, or even a Grixis strategy as well, this card is so good on curve. Again, it's something that's gonna like blow your socks off amazing, but I think it's good enough that it's gonna be a great beat stick in Limited, it's gonna be a great beat stick in Draft, and it's gonna be a fantastic beat stick in this Standard format where you're gonna be doing a tribal themed pirate deck. EDH as well, if you're a pirate themed deck, this is gonna be a ton of fun too. Moving on to another card, it needs to be translated as well. This is Deadeye Plunderers, 3 colorless, 1 blue, 1 black for a 3/3 human pirate. Deadeye Plunderers gets +1/+1 for each artifact you control, and you can pay 2 colorless, 1 blue, 1 black, create a colorless artifact token named Treasure, and of course it sacks. You can add 1 mana of any color to your mana pool. I think this card is actually pretty decent in Drafted and Sealed. In Standard, it's too expensive, sadly. In Modern, it's not going to get played, and in EDH, it's going to be in a pirate-themed deck. Again, the art on this card is a ton of fun. I love the art. Again, the art, guys. Oh, the art. Art! Oh my gosh. Art is pain. That's what they call it. Painting. That was dorky. If you've gotten this far, I'm sorry. I've lost it. But yeah, in Draft and Sealed, this card is a ton of fun. And again, it might be actually in a Revelant Riches deck because it's creating treasures. So that's interesting too. I do think this will probably be in some sort of like Standard brew with a Kaladesh like inspired theme all over it because giving it +1/+1 for each artifact you control is quite good. So making a 0 mana Ornithopter come out and it being a 4/4 for 5 makes it a lot better. So we might see this be brewed around in Standard. I might even brew with it, heck. But just look out for that as well, guys. Moving on to another creature, we have Hostagetaker. It's 2 colorless, 1 blue, 1 black for a 2/3 human pirate. When Hostagetaker enters the battlefield, exile target artifact or creature until Hostagetaker leaves the battlefield. You may cast that card for as long as it remains exiled. You may spend mana as though it were of any mana to cast that spell. I love the flavor of this card because it's basically like, I steal your best creature and also I'm going to turn that creature around and like play it against you. So it's awesome. I think in Draft and Sealed, it's a little expensive, but I do think it does have viability to be able to steal again like their biggest bomb and turn it against them. So that's really cool. In Standard, this might make a really cool like Aziria's controlled deck strategy. I'm not really sure about like a pirate theme for this, but I think that the ability to basically copy steal is really fun. But I do think that the biggest place this will be kind of making impact in is EDH, because the ability of what it's doing is actually a ton of fun to be able to pull off in EDH. I take your creature, now I cast your creature. That's what this is doing. Next up, we have Admiral Beckett Brass, 1 colorless, 1 blue, 1 black, 1 red for a 3/3 legendary creature human pirate. Other pirates you control get +1/+1. At the beginning of your end step, gain control of target non-land permanent controlled by a player who was dealt combat damage by 3 or more pirates this turn. I feel really bad about this card because, one, I love the art. I love the art. I think it's really cool that we have like an older like lady on this art piece. I think that the Grixis colors is okay for it being a pirate. I like the pirate buff on it, but the beginning of the end step ability, like that's if like you're winning really hard, basically. It's a win more ability, and I just do not like win more abilities in Standard. So for 4 mana, a 3/3 that just pumps your creatures is okay. It's a little bit expensive as far as like mana requirements, and that's kind of what makes me sad about it the most. But the other thing that makes me sad about it is that unless you're attacking out every single turn to get that secondary ability, it's just not going to be great. It would be much better just to play a Metallic Mimic or any kind of other pump spell in the format. Again, I like the card a lot. I love the flavor. I love the flavor text that you and your ship will make a fine addition to my fleet. That's awesome. But I think it's lacking in that it's just really fragile, and I think that it's just is a little expensive for what you're getting, really. If this was just 1 blue, 1 black, 1 red by itself, a 3 mana 3/3 with a pump and a secondary ability, I think that would make it so much better, and it would be even like playable at that point. But at the 4-mana slot, it's just like kind of sad to me. Of course, that's my opinion. You can have yours too. You can leave in the comments below. Just let me know. Moving on to another card, we have Tishana, Voice of Thunder, 5 colorless for a green and a blue with a star legendary creature, Motorfolk Shaman. Tishana, Voice of Thunder's power and toughness are each equal to the number of cards in your hand. You have no maximum hand size, and when Tishana enters the battlefield, draw a card for each creature you control. We haven't had a no maximum hand size card in Standard for a while now, and Tishana is a ton of fun. In Drafted and Sealed, this might be a good like top-end card if you have a creature-heavy strategy, but in Standard, this card might just be a 1/1 for 7, which is not good. If you can protect her, she's great. If you can't, she's basically just a bulk rare. In EDH, she'll be a ton of fun, and she might make a cool commander as well. But besides that, I wouldn't really see this getting any kind of like actual top tier play. Next up, we have Gish, Sun's Avatar. It's 5 colorless, 1 red, 1 green, 1 white for a 7/6 legendary creature dinosaur avatar with trample, vigilance, and haste. Whenever Gishoth Sun's Avatar deals combat damage to a player, reveal that many cards from the top of your library. Put any number of dinosaur creature cards among them onto the battlefield and the rest on the bottom of your library in any random order. Well, if this doesn't scream like brew around me Standard card, I don't know what does. For 8 mana, this card is stupid expensive, but for what you're getting whenever the card comes in and attacks at least 1 time and gets damage in, the card is kind of broken actually. In Draft and Sealed, if you pull this into your deck and you want to play the mana requirements, this card might just win you the game outright. They might just you know, they'll just give you the golf clap and be like, good job, you actually played it for 8 mana. That's congratulations. But besides that, I don't really see you seeing a lot of play in Draft or in Sealed. In Standard, this card is crazy, and if you can ramp to this card pretty early in like turn 6 or 7, I think it might actually see some play. And in Modern, this card is kind of expensive, so I don't really see that being like a thing. And in EDH, this card kind of just screams like, hey, I am the dinosaur commander, you should play with me. Like that's what I'm seeing from this card basically. But yeah, it's dumb, it's big, it's a dinosaur, so yeah. Also the art, like, come on guys, the art of this card, it's stupid, it's fun, I love it. And moving on to another Planeswalker, we have Haole, is it Haole? Huatli? I'm not really sure. Warrior Poet, 3 colorless, 1 red, 1 white, 3 loyalty counter. It's a legendary Planeswalker, and its +2 is you gain life equal to the greatest power among creatures you control. Its 0 is create a 3/3 green dinosaur creature token with trample, and its -X is deals X damage divided as you choose among any number of target creatures. Creatures dealt this damage can't block this turn. Honestly, this card is basically only good for its 0 ability. A 5-mana Planeswalker with only 3 loyalty counters is a little sad, and the ability of its 0 is the only thing that's kind of like redeemable, basically, to me. I do like the art, and I do like that this is like a cool like female lead character. I think that's awesome, but its +2 is just not what I really want to be doing, especially if like I just got into a board wipe and it's on my field. I'm not gaining life or anything, you know? What I'm afraid of happening is I play this card out, it's gonna get like destroyed immediately thanks to a shock or some other red mana spell, and I basically don't get to use it at all. So I just spent 5 mana for nothing. So again, in Draft and Sealed, you won't see this because it's a mythic, but if you do see it, it's great for making 3/3s turn over turn. In Standard, I feel like people are gonna try and make this work into a dinosaur deck, and it might work. But again, 5 mana for just making a 3/3 is not great, guys. So, I mean, the -3 might be something, but again, it's just not what I want to be doing turn over turn. Anything where you just gain life outright for a +2 or a plus is usually just not great. So, again, I like basically 2 out of the 3 abilities, and I think the 0 ability is what you want to be doing turn over turn. But overall, I'm not hot about this card just because it's so much mana to be playing. But that does it for all of our multicolored creatures. The last couple of cards I want to kind of go over are the actual new land cycle, or actual old land cycle. So we've got our Dragon Skull Summit and our Drowned Catacombs, Glacial Fortress, Rootbound Crag, and Sunpetal Grove. So that's a ton of our like buddy lands, and that's gonna basically fix what is rotating out, basically. They're great, and you know, if you have them from the other formats, I recommend grabbing them. But the new art that's on top of them as well is a ton of fun too. I love the ship, the Drowned Catacomb right here. This is awesome with the ship art. Oh man, it's just a lot of fun to look at. But that'll do it for today's video on Ixalan Previews. Like the video if you liked it. Leave a comment below on what you thought of my opinions and what you think of the cards. Again, this guy, or the Warrior Poet, I really like, and I love the art. But again, I just think it's only really good for the 0 ability. So that's kind of why I'm not as hot on it as it should be. If it was 5 loyalty counter, or 4 loyalty counter even, I think I would like it even more. So that's what I think. Leave a comment below, and I'll see you guys in the next video.